What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Offseason Recap. Today we're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions, a team that last year underperformed, only went 9-8. This is a team that going into the season we thought could be a Super Bowl contender. Didn't quite get there. They were riddled with injuries throughout the year, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They really struggled there. They lost Ben Johnson, obviously, so they went through some, and Aaron Glenn as well, went through some growing pains there with new coaches. But I think there's still a lot to look forward with this team. I think they still have a lot of talent. They're getting to that point in, I guess if you want to call it their rebuild, I think we're kind of past that point now, but where they don't have as much money to work with. They're starting to extend their players. The guys are under contract. They're using void years. So we're getting into a new era of Lions football where like the window, it's not closing, but it's just changing. Anyway, this offseason, a lot of changes on the offensive staff. They bring in Drew Petzing from the Arizona Cardinals. Has been there for a couple of years now. I think it's a good signing. When it first happened, there was a lot of questions around it. Drew Petzing has had a very good rushing offense with the Cardinals. James Conner been a 1,000-yard rusher. He's done very well there. They've been one of the top teams in the league. I think it was either 24 where they averaged like 5 point something yards per carry, which was the best in the league, I believe. So very good run game. And then his pass game, I think, plays very well to Jared Goff's strengths, which is Jared Goff is just one of the smarter quarterbacks in the league. He's you could use the word game manager, which is kind of becoming a buzzword. What does game manager mean? But he just dissects the defense. He's not, Patrick Mahomes where he's going to use his legs. He can make these crazy plays. Give him the concept, give him the playbook, give him the scheme. Let him learn it. Let him become a master of it. And let him just go out and work his craft. Let's go over here. I just want to touch on just basically the basics, like the base of offense in Drew Petzing's scheme. And this is really just every NFL team runs like this. Pretty much any team from any level of football. What we see here is a basic route concept called snag. Basically, you have, this is in bunch, by the way, so bunch from a snag, you can run it from, different looks. You could use a running back. You could be in trips. Different things you could do, but basically this route here, right here, being run by the Z, this is the snag route. It's basically like a slant. Rather than continue going, you just stop and you snag. This F receiver right here is running a flat route. And this Y right here, he's running a corner. Basically what's happening here is what we call a triangle concept. Let me draw that out. It's going to get a little confusing, but basically what's happening is that the quarterback is reading in a triangle, looking at his receivers, and basically this is manipulating defenders and trying to, and basically you just read it based off what the defenders do. That's where the ball goes. So this right here, the defense they're running, I know this is just a hodgepodge of different lines, got pretty confusing, but just so you can see the triangle, I'll take that off now. Let's say that this is a basic cover 2. This corner over here is just in a flat. This is the safety's playing half. This safety's playing a half. This Will linebacker's got a hook to curl over here. This Mike's got a hook to curl, and this nickel's got a hook to curl. This corner has a flat. What's happening here is that this receiver is going into the flat, manipulating this corner. This receiver is coming towards the middle, and then this receiver is running basically through this nickel, breaking out here. The quarterback has different reads and different things that he could do based off what these defenders do. So this corner right here is biting down, especially since he's in a flat, he's biting down on this. So now based off what this safety does and what this nickel does, you're looking at this corner out here. But if the nickel stays with that and the Mike doesn't move over here to help out with this is going to be open. There's so much more nuance to that. There's so many things that go into that, and you're basically manipulating 3 defenders, but there's many different ways you could go. You could have different coverages. You could have man coverage, zone coverage. But that's basically what a triangle concept is. That's what Drew Petzing runs a lot of. And part of the reason why people were a little skeptical and weren't really happy about it was because people have said that he has a bit of a, how do I want to word this? Not ununique, but not like really complex passing game, which can be a problem. Defenses start to figure you out real quick. They understand, what you're doing if you're really into basic things. But to kind of counteract that, they bring in Mike Kafka to be the passing game coordinator. He was with the Giants for the past couple of years as the offensive coordinator, and he's known coming from the Andy Reid tree, which is very in-depth on deep route passing concepts. So those two are going to kind of work together, kind of put their minds together. But then they also have Hank Fraley in that mix, who last year was in the running for different offensive coordinator positions for the Lions. I believe he got an interview for the Seahawks. So he's their offensive line coach, very good offensive line coach, good run game coordinator. So you have those three guys who are all, it's kind of like they have too many cooks in the kitchen. Now that could kind of go two ways. They could all work together and put things together and then have it work out perfectly, or you have three guys kind of button heads and it starts to cause a bit of an issue. I think that these three can mesh together perfectly. I think that schematically, this offense is going to be used much better. We'll get into the depth chart and everything in a little bit, but they've got a lot of weapons on this offense. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Tesla, Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs. They've got a pretty solid offensive line. There's a lot of weapons to be used on this team, and you can't let it go to waste by not having complex enough routes or changing things up. Now, another reason why I think they brought in Drew Petzing is because people think that the terminology is very similar to what they've had in the past, Ben Johnson. So you don't want your amazing quarterback and Jared Goff, who really thrives on being able to change the play at the line of scrimmage, knowing what the defense is doing, diagnosing things quick. You don't want him to have to go through another learning curve where has to relearn different terminology and stuff. Let him just pick up day one, training camp, mini camp. Let him just, rather than having to take some time to relearn things, just go. I think that's a big reason why they brought in Petzing. And then I think this offense can kind of gel. Defense basically stayed the same. Calvin Shepard. This defense is I don't like it personally. I don't love what they do. They ran the most base defense in the entire NFL last year, which basically what that means is if you run a 4-3 or 3-4, I can actually go here and show you. So basically, let's just say that there's 4 down linemen. Actually, we can just do this. Let's just go to a 4-3. Basically, you could just ignore these routes. This would be their base defense. So 3 linebackers, 4 down linemen. They were in that most of the time. Whereas you look at a team like the Seahawks, who arguably had the best defense, or the Texans, they were a nickel a lot more. So you go here, they get an extra defensive back on the field, which what that allows you to do is it helps you to stop the passing game more. But the downside is if you use nickel, you lose a run defender, use a linebacker, so your run defense is not going to be as good. But teams like the Seahawks or the Texans or these other great teams have nickel defenders who are great against the pass, but also great against the run. Anyway, the Lions run base a lot. I don't love it. It did work to certain extents, but I think once you get to playing teams that are just at a higher level, or just quite frankly are better, have more talent, running base so much is going to become a problem. I think they got to get out of that. Now, there was tons of injuries last year. Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch is banged up, so many injuries. So that kind of played a part into it, but they still ran the most base in the entire league. I believe it was like 670 snaps or something like that of base. The Seahawks ran about 60. So that kind of just paints a picture of what I'm talking about. It's a massive difference. So I kind of hope they get away from running so much base and get more into like the modern stuff where running more nickel. We'll see what happens there. But anyway, let's move into their offseason moves. So free agency, let's talk about who they lost. They actually lost quite a few big contributors. Alex Anzalone's been with this team for a couple years now. He's been playing the will with Jack Campbell, All-Pro, they just re-signed. Great signing, by the way. I've seen some people talk about Jack Campbell being overrated or not that good. I disagree with that. He was All-Pro I think his first team All-Pro this year. Amazing player, great size, great run defender, good in pass coverage. I think he's one of the best linebackers in the league. I think he's up there in the top 3. I keep talking about this in every one of my videos, but Fred Warner, Roquan Smith, Jack Campbell, Ernest Jones. I swear I bring it up in the past 3 videos. But anyways, Alex Anzalone they lose, which is going to be a bit of a loss. He was getting a little bit older. He wasn't an outstanding player. I think him being gone would actually get them to be in more base as well, because they're not going to have as many linebackers that they want to go to. So could be a blessing in disguise, but he's a great leader. He did a lot for them. You don't want to see him go. Then they lose a Meek Robertson, which he's another one of those small corners. He's only like 5'9" and played on the boundary a lot, played some in the slot, but they had a lot of corners who were just like undersized. DJ Reed. That's DJ Reader. DJ Reed, the cornerback who's been with the Seahawks, Jets, he's undersized. And Meek Robertson's undersized. And then Brian Bench, who comes up and plays and nickel sometimes, isn't huge. Terrion Arnold, who was supposed to be one of their bigger corners, didn't really play great last year, so they had a lot of undersized corners. He leaves, he goes over to the Commanders. I think that's a good signing for the Commanders, but he is a good player, but I think they need to get some bigger corners in. They lose DJ Reader to the Giants, which I think DJ Reader is definitely past his prime. He's getting older. He's a nose tackle. You have some guys that are going to step up in that role. Tyreek Williams, some other guys we'll talk about in a little bit. I think you let him go. Ali McNeil as well. You move on to the next era of defensive tackles. Roy Lopez, another nose tackle they let walk. That's fine. Like I said, you have a bunch of guys there. This one I don't get why they let him walk. Al-Qadim Muhammad. This guy statistically was one of the best pass rushers in the entire league last year. He had an 18% pressure rate, I believe, which basically if you have anywhere between 10 to 15% pressure rate, you're a very good edge rusher. If it's anything above 15, you're elite. Now, this guy is just a pure pass rusher. His run defense is very limited. He was really only on the field for passing downs to rush the quarterback. But when he's producing that much, and he had 11 sacks last year and had so much pressure, to lose him, that's huge, especially only for $4 million. Like, I get he's not a 3-down player, but jeez. Like, I think they might really struggle depending on how some players pan out this year. We'll talk about them in a second. I don't want to get to that too quick, but I really don't like them letting him walk. I wish they brought him back, but see what happens there. Khalif Raymond they let walk, who's been with them for quite a few years now. Just great after the catch. Kind of like their fourth receiver that would rotate in. Good return man. Hate to see him go, but they replace him with Greg Dortch, who we'll talk about in a little bit, coming over from the Cardinals with Drew Petzing, so kind of cancels out. Then these guys on here, kind of just losing depth. Nothing of too much substance here, but depth, especially backup quarterback, but they bring back Teddy Bridgewater, so that's fine. To move into the guys that they brought in. So Cade Mays comes in to be their new center of the future, hopefully. Just the position's been a disaster as of recent. Frank Ragnow, surprise, retires, then he comes back and then can't play. Then I believe it was it Garrett Bradbury or was it Glasgow? I think it was Bradbury who was playing guard and they moved him to center, then they ended up cutting him. So a bit of a mess. They bring in Cade Mays, good size, solid athleticism, been playing center for a little bit. He's actually got some versatility to play all 5 positions, but solid center. Hopefully he could just fill that role and they don't have as much of a rotation on their offensive line there. Then they bring in Larry Borum, which there were some questions about what they were going to do with this offensive line with Penei Sewell. Looks like Penei Sewell is going to move over to the left side. Larry Borum is a right tackle, but he's got the ability to swing over and play both. We'll talk about it now, but Blake Miller, we'll talk about in a little bit, but he's going to be their right tackle. Looks like Penei Sewell's going to be the left tackle. Larry Borum going to be the swing tackle. They've also got Giovanni Manu, so we'll talk about him later. I'm getting way too ahead of myself. Jeez. Rocky Sin, they bring in a boundary corner. He's a little bit undersized. He's about 5'11", so he's bigger than those other guys. We're talking about DJ Reed and Meek Robertson, but once again, not a huge corner. DJ Wanham, like I said, they lost Al-Qadim Muhammad. They replace him with Derek Moore. Once again, getting ahead of myself, we'll talk about him in a little bit, but they bring in DJ Wanham, who is a run defender. His pass rush is not great. I pulled up some of his tape just to see if I was missing something. No, he does not have a lot of pass rush in his bag. I watched his pressures. I watched his sacks. His 3 sacks did not come off of like actual pass rush. 2 of them, he just walked into them. One of them was on a spy, I believe, and then his pressures, I didn't really see a ton. I saw a chop, a lot of bull rushing. So there's not a ton there, but a good run defender. Does not replace Al-Qadim Muhammad, but good run defender. Bring back Malcolm Rodriguez, who looks to probably play a little bit more this year now that they've lost Anzalone. He's been developing. Was a preseason standout, training camp standout a couple years ago. They bring in Christian Izien, who's a safeties nickel hybrid. Good athlete. I like that value. Good depth for them. Bring in Isaiah Pacheco to be their number 2 running back. Obviously, they traded David Montgomery this offseason. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I think he's a solid player. He's been injured. Obviously, we've seen him be amazing contributor, being a 7th round pick for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. One of the hardest runners I've ever seen. Like, this guy just hates the ground. I don't know. Just absolutely drives his feet into the ground, runs really hard. Just seems like a Lions player. Seems like a Dan Campbell kind of guy. Just gonna run it hard, play hard, like that. Vontae Maddox they bring back in. Solid corner depth. A lot of depth down here. Damone Clark, depth. Roger McCreary is a nickel corner. I actually like him. I believe he was traded to the Rams last year from the Titans. Solid player, like him. Greg Dortch we talked about a little bit earlier, kind of replacing Khalif Raymond, coming over from Drew Petzing from the Cardinals. I like what he can do after the catch. A lot of screens, return guy. Like I said, basically just replaces Khalif Raymond. Then a bunch of depth here. Trevor Nowakowski, Tyler Conklin to be like their number 2/number 3 tight end. He's more of a move tight end, pass catching tight end. Line up in the slot where Brock Wright is more of a blocking tight end. And Laporta's their true, every down tight end. Tom Kennedy they bring back for some special teams. And then down here, all basically just depth and special teams. Jay Tufele is a 3 tech. Cedric Wilson, who has been bouncing around a little bit, was with the Cowboys. He played pretty well. Then with the Dolphins, he's kind of fell out of the league. But yeah, as for free agency, I think they did pretty good this free agency. Obviously, as I talked about earlier, they are getting to the point of their team. I don't want to say rebuild because they're not in a rebuild anymore, but they're getting to the point where they don't have a ton of money to just dish out to free agents. They're already paying a ton of guys, so it makes sense. I think they did good with what they had, and I think they brought in players who can contribute. Talk about the David Montgomery trade. Basically, David Montgomery for Juice Scruggs, who's kind of just like a shot in the dark. Maybe he could be something, maybe not. Then a 4th this year and the 7th next year. This 4th was used in a trade to trade up to get 2nd round pick Derek Moore here, where they jumped the Ravens, which we think the Ravens might have taken him. Michigan, Jesse Minter connection. I don't mind that. So basically, in a roundabout way, they traded David Montgomery to be able to trade up to get Derek Moore. Not exactly what happened, but fine trade, I think. I think it's fine to move off from now. Obviously, I would like to see David Montgomery there, like the Sonic and Knuckles duo with him and Jahmyr Gibbs. Side to see him go, but they got to do what they got to do. Anyway, let's talk about their entire draft class. Blake Miller, talked about him just a little bit earlier. Going to be their right tackle. Very solid player. I think that's just what he is. I think kind of consensus, just like, yeah, this guy's probably going to be a pretty good starting right tackle for the next decade. I don't think he'll ever be an all-pro, but I think he's just going to be like a good player. Like, I think if I was to say to Madden terms, like, he's going to be like an 85 overall in Madden, and he's just going to be like a solid guard for the next 10 years. He's got good size, good arm length, like 34 inches, good athleticism. Played at Clemson, which is a disaster last year, but like many other players on that team, he showed out, played good despite the team kind of sucking. Good pick. Derek Moore. I like this pick, but I don't like what they did with the overall edge room. Aiden Hutchins is obviously a great player, but then losing Al-Qadim Muhammad and then replacing him kind of with DJ Wanham, Derek Moore is basically going to be asked a lot in pass rush. But Derek Moore is a great pass rusher. I believe he had a 17% pressure rate last year at Michigan. Lots of power, lots of speed to power. He's going to line up in a 2-point stance, like standing up, not much in a 3-point stance. I believe I saw that it was like 95% of his snaps he was in a 2-point stance standing up. So very good pass rusher. But he's, like I said, he's going to be asked to do a lot in the pass rush, which I think they would have been better off as a whole. I'm not just talking about Derek Moore, because like I said, I love him as a player. I think they probably could use a little bit more in that room just in terms of pass rush. But anyways, like I said, a lot of power, a lot of speed to power. I like to see him develop some more counter moves, some more finesse with his hands. Right now, I think he's going to rely too much on the power, which the power is great. I was watching some of his clips yesterday just to get ready for this video, and man, he's just so powerful. Like, his athletic testing scores weren't off the charts, but his get off and his just ability to just ram into tackles was very impressive. And then I like how he's used on stunts. Obviously, that bull rush and his ability to just throw himself into tackles and bowl through them, I think would work very well in stunts. So I like that pick. Jimmy Rolder is a very interesting player. Only really played a lot his last year at Michigan, so he doesn't have a lot of experience. But when you watch the tape, watch the film, it looks like he's been starting for 4 years. He's a very solid athlete, and he's a very good run defender. Coverage skills are, average, maybe a little bit below average, but he was really fun to watch. He flew around just flying into gaps. He just looked like a linebacker. What does that mean? I don't know, but he just looked like a linebacker. I don't know. I don't know how else to word that. He just looked the part. I don't know how to word it, but when he was moving around and tackling, he just looked like a linebacker. I know, great analysis on this channel, but I don't know how else to word it. I'm really trying here. I'm buying time, trying to think of how I should word this. I can't think of anything. Anyways, great player. I think he's got to develop for a couple of years, maybe get some more playing time. I think he could be a contributor this year for an injury. Some of their base looks. I think he could definitely see the field just because of how good of a player he is, but he needs to develop a little bit more. He'll be on special teams this year. Give him another 2-3 years. I think he'll definitely solidify himself as a starter on this team. I think, honestly, if he had played another year, he probably would have been a much higher draft pick because he just looked the part, but lack of experience falls a little bit. Keith Apney, another one of the small corners. He's like 5'9". The Lions love these guys. Played on the boundary at Arizona State, was a great player. I believe he had a 97. He was in the 97th percentile for pass deflections, I believe, which is incredible. He looks the part. He's exactly what you want out of a corner, other than his height. He talks the trash. He's a competitor. He's got good instincts in zone. His man is pretty good. He's what you want, but the size is just questionable. I don't know if he can be able to stick on the boundary. His athleticism isn't great, so I think he's more of a nickel. But they've already got quite a few guys in that position, and they kind of need some more depth at boundary corner. If there's injuries, he might need to play there. So I really wish they could get some bigger guys, but he is one of those guys where he's just a great player, great in the field, great instincts. If he was 2 inches taller, like 5'11", he would probably be he'd probably be in day 1, maybe day 2 pick. Kendrick Law, very interesting player, transferred from Alabama to Kentucky. I was watching his clips yesterday, and he is a very fun player to watch. He's not much of a route runner. He's more of, honestly, I would be interested to see him move to running back. Most of his catches were behind the line of scrimmage anyways. So, I mean, I watched him run routes, and then I watched him with the ball in his hands, like screen, just running. When he ran routes, he looked so much slower than when he ran with the ball in his hands already. So, it was very weird to watch. I haven't seen many players like that so far, where it's just like, I don't want you running routes, I just want the ball in your hands already. So I would be interested to see him move to running back. But yeah, like I said, he's not, the route tree is very limited. He's not really, he doesn't look athletic when he's running routes, but you look at the testing scores, you look at him run with the ball in his hands, he looks extremely explosive. He was like a 4.4 guy at a 42-inch vert, I believe. And he looks that part when he's got the ball in his hands. He explodes. It's something turns on in his head. He gets the ball in his hands, and all of a sudden, he shifts 4 gears. But when he's running routes, it's not there. So maybe some development. But like I said, I would like to see him at running back. I don't know if they're going to do that, but we'll see. Skylar Gill-Howard, undersized, 6'1", 280, 3 tech. He's okay. He's pretty good pass rusher. Run defense is pretty good. Coming off of a broken ankle, I believe, pretty gruesome injury from last year in week 6, I believe. He's on the Texas Tech defensive line with Lee Hunter, David Bailey, Romello Height. Very good group. I don't know how much he really translates to the NFL level. I think he's going to really have to rely on some disruption, just causing chaos, using leverage. I think it's going to be very difficult for him to pan out, but obviously rooting for everybody here, want them all to be successful, but I think he is one of the players where I think it's going to be a little bit questionable. Tyree West, hybrid edge kind of defensive tackle. He's 6'1", 270, 280 with solid athleticism, but they had him at Tennessee line up as a 5 tech off the edge. I don't think he's really going to do that. The pass rush isn't that incredible, and the athleticism and bend isn't that great. So he's kind of one of those hybrid players where tweeners, you don't know if he's going to play on the edge, play on the interior. I think those guys, there's starting to be a lot of them, and if you're a jack of all trades but master of none, and you can't really hone your skills into one, not hone your skills into one thing, but really just stand out, rather than just being okay at everything, I think this would be hard for him to make the roster. But overall, I like this draft class. I think they add some depth. I think they add some playmakers and guys who could contribute, and some guys who I think, given a couple years, like Jimmy Roller, Derek Moore, can really develop into major playmakers. And also, I think Derek Moore, like I said, I didn't talk about his run defense, but his run defense is good. I like to see him be a little bit better there. Like, his instincts are good. It just like to see it click more. But overall, I think this is a good draft class. I like what they did. I think they hit on all these picks. I think they're all great picks. Let's look at their multi-year salary cap. So, Jared Goff. I talked about him earlier. I think that Jared Goff is a good quarterback. I think he's in that game manager kind of mold. But like I said, with game manager, it's kind of becoming a buzzword. What is a game manager? You know, is Sam Darnold, who just won a Super Bowl, is he a game manager? Is Brock Purdy a game manager? Was Tom Brady a game manager? You know, whatever. But I think he's a great quarterback. I think in this Drew Petzing offense, he's really going to be able to excel, which I watched of Drew Petzing. I watched a couple games. I watched his week 4 with the Cardinals against the Seahawks, and I watched the week 10 matchup against the Seahawks. And the reason I did that was because obviously one of the better defenses in the league, but it was very different. The week 4 game, they started Kyler Murray. The week 10 game, they started Jacoby Brissett. And watching just the difference between those two players was incredible. Obviously, Kyler Murray, smaller, much smaller guy, but more mobility. Jacoby Brissett, a bigger guy, gets kind of stand in the pocket, deliver throws. I thought Jacoby Brissett looked a lot more comfortable and a lot better in that system because he could stand in the pocket, step into his throws, and deliver a strike. Whereas Kyler Murray, being smaller, a lot of times he really struggled to step into his throws and stand in the pocket and really read the defense, which in this Drew Petzing offense is, I think, what you're really going to need to be able to do. And I think Jared Goff is a better Jacoby Brissett. I think he's much better processor. I think he's got a better arm. I think he's just a better player. So I think he fits in perfectly to what Drew Petzing wants. Now, his contract's going to get pretty steep. You see the 62 million, basically 70 million 2028. That's pretty steep. Like I said earlier in the video, their window, I don't want to say it's closing, but it's tightening. It's getting a little interesting on what's going to be able to happen. They have a ton of void years already into all of their players, so lots of dead cap looking to be on the horizon. Also, basically, if you don't know what void years are, in NFL contracts, how it's structured is you have a base salary and a signing bonus. If you sign a 4-year deal with a $20 million signing bonus, you get $5 million spread across all 4 years of the signing bonus, rather than just it all being in 1 year. So if you had void years, you could spread that across years after the contract, so you have more money to deal with in those seasons. So like I said, the Lions have their window open now. They're trying to open it up, get some money to spend, get good talent in here and compete. If it doesn't work out and they can't win, they're going to have some financial limitations moving forward. They might have to make some cuts on the roster, based off who they pay. There's a lot of guys getting paid. Goff, St. Brown, Aleem McNeil, Penei Sewell, DJ Reed, they probably not going to be here coming soon. Aiden Hutchinson, obviously, big contract, one of the best edge rushers in the league. Jameson Williams, $40 million in a void year over here. That's a lot of money. Sam Laporte is going to need an extension. Brian Burns is going to need an extension. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to need an extension. Jack Campbell just got his extension, which was 4 years, 81. So you're paying a lot of guys a lot of money. And you're going to be in a bit of a rough patch moving forward with paying these guys. So the window is now. They need to compete now. I think for sure this team is definitely a competitive team. I think they've set themselves up for that. Let's look over to their depth chart. They've got the playmakers on offense. This offense is built. They've got everything you'd want. You have your star quarterback. You have an extremely explosive running back in Jahmyr Gibbs, who's up there with Bijan Robinson, probably is like the 1A, 1B, just best running backs in the league. Saquon Barkley's also up there, but in terms of pass catching and just his athleticism and explosive ability to turn any run into a 90-yard touchdown, incredible. Isaiah Pacheco, I think, will be an interesting backup to him. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Isaac Tesla as your big play guy. Jameson Williams to stretch the field and just be an incredible athlete. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown is a slot receiver who catches everything, tough, can block. Sam Laporta, the offensive line. Penei Sewell is one of the best tackles in the league. Blake Miller you bring in as a solid tackle. Cade Mays you bring in. Then last year you drafted Mahogany and Tate Ratledge. So you've got this offense. This offense is ready to go. You need to make things happen, which I think they can. Let's talk about the depth of the offense before we get onto the defense. Teddy Bridgewater they bring in as their backup quarterback, solid player. Sione Vaki is a very interesting player. He was a safety, like running back, quarterback, like hybrid. Very interesting player there. Has some special teams value, especially you put him at the back of the roster. He kind of basically is two players for the price of one. Jacob Sailors provides some return upside. Then we're talking about Greg Dortch, return upside, good after the catch guy, kind of replaces Khalif Raymond. Kendrick Law we talked about from Kentucky, good player after the catch. Cedric Wilson they bring in. Tom Kennedy might make the team before there's some special teams upside. Then some other guys. Malik Cunningham, a former quarterback, turned into receiver, interesting player. Then at tight end, Laporta, great player, one of the better tight ends in the league, blocking and receiving. Brock Wright, great blocker. Tyler Conklin, more of a receiving tight end. Then on the offensive line, depth-wise, Giovanni Manu, we talked about him just a little bit. Very interesting player from British Columbia, 6'7", 350, good athleticism, but he's like a blank slate. They drafted him, I think it was probably 2 years ago now. There's not a lot there in terms of technique and skills. So they basically drafted him in the 4th round to be like, okay, you're an amazing athlete, we're going to develop you. He may slide into guard because there are some questions, but I think I like him as a prospect. We'll see what happens. Drew Scruggs they got in the David Montgomery trade. Larry Borum they brought in to be a backup, like swing tackle. Ben Bartz they brought in as a free agent. And like some other depth pieces on the offensive line. And then now let's move on to the defense. This unit has to step up this year. Last year, you look at the numbers, they were okay, but I think in big games when it mattered against good teams with better talent, I think that's when it kind of started to fall apart. They need to be better. They need to step up. They need to be able to pressure the quarterback. Their secondary needs to stay healthy. They had so many injuries last year. If they can stay healthy, I think they could complement this offense, and they really have to play through their offense and get the offense the ball, keep the ball in the offense's hands. Aiden Hutchinson, one of the best edge rushers in the league. DJ Wanham, talked about him, not a huge fan, good run defender. Derek Moore's really got to play a huge role in rushing the passer. This interior defensive line's actually very good as well. Liam McNeil, great nose tackle, great run stopper. I think he played 3-tech as well. Levi Onzariki, a good 3-tech as well. Tyreek Williams, they drafted in I believe it was the 1st round a year or two ago. Good nose tackle, good run defender. Jay Tufele, 3-tech they brought in. So this defensive line, Peyton Turner, also former 1st-round pick who hasn't worked out. Ahmed Hassanin from Egypt, very fun player at the combine. I remember watching him last year. Yeah, I think it was last year. So they've got some pieces on this defensive line. They had to be able to pressure the quarterback. They have to be able to stop the run. This defense has to complement the offense, like I said. Then linebackers, talked about how I don't want them to be in base as much. Derek Barnes was with them last year. Solid player. Jack Campbell, Malcolm Rodriguez, Jimmy Rolder, I think, can carve out a role with Damone Clark. I really want them to get out of that base look where there's 3 linebackers on the field. Get some more DBs on there. Get more into a nickel look. I think they'd be better off. I think they could do it as well because these linebackers are very good players. Moving on to the secondary. Very small corners here. DJ Reed, 5'9". Roger McCreary's solid size. Rocky Sin's like 5'11". Keith Abney's smaller. Just a lot of smaller corners, and they got rid of some this offseason. So I would like to see them add some size, but these are good players. Don't get me wrong. Very good players. Then look at their safety room. This is where things are really going to reside. Like, things are going to have to step up because Brian Branch is one of the better safeties in the league. He's a hybrid. He's a good run defender. He could play the nickel. Very good in pass coverage. Then Kirby Joseph. He's their deep safety. In single high. He's their single high safety, free safety, in 2 high. He's got to stay healthy because he's got great ball production, very good player, good run defense. If he can stay healthy, it helps this defense so much. Then they bring in Chuck Clark, who's a solid player. He's played, all over the place throughout his career, but now he's getting older. He's losing some of the range, losing some of the athleticism. So I think he's going to be more of like a box safety. He's obviously going to be playing strong safety as long as Kirby Joseph stays healthy. helping out in the run game, just more of a experienced player who's can rely on his instincts. Then Avonte Maddox is really more of a corner, but last year had to play a ton of safety because of how many injuries they had. So he provides some flexibility, play corner, play safety. So I think he's a pretty solid player. Then Christian Iziem we talked about. Ennis Rakestraw was a draft pick from a couple years ago. He had some hype to go in, I think second or third round, but then he ends up falling a little bit, I believe. Just double check that. No, I think it's somebody else. He did go in the second round. I liked him as a prospect. I'm thinking of somebody else. I can't think of their name. But yeah, anyways, we went on special teams. Jake Bates, solid kicker. Jack Fox, one of the better punters in the league. Return-wise, Greg Dortch, I think could definitely play a big role in the return game. Jacob Sailors, I think Greg Dortch probably returns punts and kicks just because of how dynamic and shifty of an athlete he is. Mauricio Nivaki could be interesting there. But yeah, overall, I think this is a good team. I think this is a pivotal year. They have to compete this year. They're ready to go. The longer that we wait, the longer that they're not competing, the shorter that their window is. They have to put things together. The offense has to gel. The run game has to work. The passing game has to work. The defense has to not get injured. Even if they do get injured, they have to be able to have the depth to, withstand that. Because they've had some injuries across their defense for the past couple years now, and that's been a big problem. But I do think this is a Super Bowl contending team. I think this is one of the true contenders in the league. I think the NFC North is a tough division. All four teams are going to be good. Packers, Bears, Vikings, Lions, obviously. Four very good teams all on the rise. So it's going to be very difficult. But I think I don't want to say the best team in that division because I do think that the Packers are so well coached and their team has just been so good. And the Bears, Ben Johnson is just such a wizard offensively, and that offense is great and the defense is on the rise. And then the Vikings are also extremely well coached. So very competitive division, but I think they can actually be a competitor. I think this team is probably like 11-6, maybe 12-5 team. I think that's probably in the range they fall. I think honestly, just based off how good that division is, I think that could win the division. I think all those teams could honestly be floating around that range. I think the Vikings will be better than people might think with Kyler Murray. See what happens with JJ McCarthy. We'll talk about them in a future video. But yeah, overall, I think this is a good team. I think they had a solid offseason. Wish they brought in some more edge help. So I think they really need help there, especially if Derek Moore can't really, shoulder what Al-Qadim Mohammed brought last year. But yeah, overall, good offseason, good team, contender. Yeah, thank you for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe, drop a comment if you disagree with me on anything, if you have any other ideas, if you think I missed anything, you want to have any discussions on anything. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.